The Liberal leader met with reporters today to announce that his party would not prop up the government unless the Prime Minister met several conditions. Michael Ignatieff wants more information on possible government changes to improve employment insurance benefits, more information on stimulus spending and plans for erasing the ballooning deficit, government action on the shortage of medical isotopes.
We demanded that the government submit to Parliament regular reports on its performance. The government submitted its second report last Thursday. We listened to the Prime Minister, we studied the report carefully, and we consulted with Canadians. And we have serious questions about this report and about the government's performance. The Prime Minister said the government had plans to introduce further changes to employment insurance in the fall. The government needs to tell Canadians what its plans for employment insurance are now, not in 3 months' time. And the Liberal Party needs to see those plans before we can allow the government to proceed. The government has failed to give Canadians a clear answer to the following questions. How much money has actually been spent in the first 120 days? How much money does the government anticipate will be spent over the next 120 days? The Liberal Party accepts the need for deficit spending in tough times. But the question Canadians are asking is, what plan does the government have to get our finances back under control? Canadians are entitled to know what the government's deficit projections are for the next 5 years and what plans it has to return Canada's finances to balance. These are the questions Canadians want their government to answer. These are the questions Canadians have asked me to ask on their behalf. The government's answers in this accountability report just aren't good enough. The government's performance in Parliament just isn't good enough. So where do we go from here? I am not seeking an election. Je ne souhaite pas d'élection. But our job means standing up for our principles, standing up when the government lets Canadians down.
Last Thursday in Montreal, you said you'd give a straight up and down answer. I wouldn't say that you've given us a straight up and down answer today. Do your demands mean that the Prime Minister's report failed?
I don't grade reports like this. It's too serious. This isn't a game. I've given a clear answer to this question. I've said that the report fails to meet the needs of Canadians, and I can't continue my support on this basis. It's perfectly clear. But I've also said Canadians don't want an election and we want to make Parliament work. And so I've been very clear that if the Prime Minister reaches out and provides honest answers to the questions that Canadians have, we can continue to work together. This is about cooperation. I'm seeking cooperation, not confrontation. But the Prime Minister has to be very clear about my intentions. He has to be very clear that I'm serious about this.
Mr. Ignatieff, I'm surprised you're not setting any markers at all on EI. It makes it sound like you really are trying to give Mr. Harper a way out and avoid an election. Or do you have any idea at all what you would accept, or would you accept anything just to avoid an election on this next week?
Les, I don't accept your characterization. We put down very clear markers that there has to be progress on employment insurance. I'm in opposition, remember. I'm not the government. They may have facts, they may have constraints of which I'm unaware. I'm a reasonable person. But the Prime Minister can't get away with saying, well, 3 months I might come back to you with something. Let's come back with something now and get this job done for Canadians. That's my position.
Sir, I want to make sure I understand the bottom line. If you don't get a response from the government by Friday, you're voting against the estimates.
Correct.
And Mr. Ignatieff made only one proposal. That was the 45-day work year. That's a proposal designed to get the support of the NDP and Bloc. Mr. Ignatieff knows full well the Conservative government is never going to support such an irresponsible idea. Now, what I said on last Thursday, that we do intend to look at some changes for the fall. I can tell you one major thing we're looking at, because it's a campaign commitment, is that we will look at ways of expanding the EI program so that the self-employed can opt in to aspects of the program. That is a major change. In fact, It's often the self-employed who are not covered today under EI. When you talk about people not receiving benefits, it's often people don't pay in because they are self-employed. So that's a very major design change we are looking at in the fall. Those kinds of changes and other major changes cannot be done on the back of an envelope in a few days. They do require some careful thought. So I would encourage Mr. Ignatieff and his party, if they want to contribute to that idea, or if they have other ideas, to be clear about them. And we'll certainly be prepared to dialogue about them over the summer as we prepare for the fall session. But I think demanding major undefined changes in the space of a few days is not a realistic approach. So I would discourage that. Usually you say do X or else. You don't just say or else. Okay.
You heard the Prime Minister's response to your conditions. Are you satisfied with what you heard from Stephen Harper?
I think we're making a little progress, but we're not out of the woods yet.
Okay, well, if you don't get past where you are right now and what you heard from the Prime Minister today, will you be able to support the estimates Friday night?
Don't know yet, Peter. Don't know.
Well, if this is your answer, if this is what you heard from Stephen Harper today, and that's it, is it good enough?
I'm in the middle of discussions with the Prime Minister. This thing is not over till it's over. We're still talking. He has responded. Some of the answers are satisfactory. Some of them are unsatisfactory.
You're demanding the national threshold of 360 hours for eligibility.
You're using words that I didn't say. I didn't mention 360, and I didn't use the word demand.
With respect, that's part of the problem. He said today at his news conference you issued an ultimatum with no ultimatum. What exactly do you want him to do on EI?
Exactly. The Prime Minister, there was a lot of bluster today. The Prime Minister uses words I never used. I never used the word ultimatum in the whole length of my press conference. I didn't use the word condition. I said I got questions, and I need answers to the questions. Some of those questions he seems willing to answer, some he doesn't. But let's take this ultimatum stuff off the table. Let's take conditions off the table, and let's meet and do some business and see whether we can do enough business to keep Parliament going and make it work. If not, I can't vote the estimates.
Right, but what specifically do you want him to do about employment insurance?
I want to sit down tomorrow and hear what proposals he's got in mind, and then I'll make a decision whether they go far enough.
Hello, everybody. I'm Don Newman. Welcome to the broadcast. On a day when opposition leader Michael Ignatieff lays down 4 conditions, he says the government must meet to avoid a summer election.
I haven't talked about ultimata. I haven't talked about conditions. All that stuff is stuff the press has put on it. I ask questions to which I think it's legitimate for us to get answers. But the problem I've got is whether Stephen Harper understands, has got it in his head, that he hasn't got the votes to carry the confidence of the House. And he has to work and reach out to other parties to get that confidence and hold it. He's lost it once in December. He could lose it again. So he's got to understand that he's got to work with other parties, reach out to other parties. And if he can do that, we can have a happy summer. If not, we'll have to have an election.
The Liberals have set their conditions and the government has said no, but it is willing to talk. It's high noon here on Parliament Hill.
He says, I'm presenting ultimatums. I never used the word. I posed questions of this government, questions that Canadians are asking for which he has to have an answer. And so let's just lower all the tone here and get down to business. I'm willing to see him tomorrow and see whether we can close the gap.
You did say that there is a deadline of Friday night on all of this. Stephen Harper said, I'm prepared to talk to Michael Ignatieff over the summer. So now we've got a timing issue here. Does this have to be done by Friday, or are you willing to say now that you will take the summer to discuss it with Stephen Harper and work something out?
The idea of long summer discussions with Stephen Harper is not the nicest possible way to spend a summer, but for the sake of my country, I'm willing to try anything.
The ultimatum.
This isn't a game.
The Liberal leader announces his conditions to avoid an election.
I'll be happy to meet Mr. Ignatieff anytime over the next few weeks.
The Prime Minister says they'll talk.
It's characteristic of the Prime Minister that when you ask him 4 pretty clear questions, he says you're throwing out an ultimatum. I never used the word ultimatum. I don't use ultimatums as a word. What I said was, here are 4 questions that I need answers to. I get some answers that I can accept as being honest and transparent, give Canadians some clear basis of where he's going, we might be able to move forward. But he's got to understand something very simple. He has to work with parliamentarians in order to make Parliament work. He hasn't learned that in 3.5 years. It's about time he starts to learn it now.
In fairness, you did say that those 4 areas were ones you wanted to hear something on, you wanted to see progress on, or you would vote against the government. I mean, implicit in that is a threat, is it not? That's an ultimatum of a kind, is it not?
I said I put questions. I get decent answers for the questions. I made it clear from the beginning, right through the day, and I make it clear again. No Canadian wants an election, but we have to make sure that this Prime Minister understands he has to have the confidence of the House, he has to cooperate with the House in order to retain the confidence of the House. That's how our system works. I'm trying to make the system work. I hope he's trying to too.
All right.